Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this Sunday. Good evening to you and yours, and it is 18th of December now, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date on your local weather information. One of the easy ways to do that from your phone is 800-472-0391. If you have a mobile device, you can navigate to weather.gov/Alaska, and there are more mobile-friendly options there. Simply scroll down and look for low bandwidth or text options on any of the pages served from weather.gov/Fairbanks, weather.gov/Anchorage, or weather.gov/Juneau. And those will be a little bit more easily applied to your low bandwidth needs there if you're out in the bush and you don't have the greatest reception, or if you're just traveling through town and you don't want to look at a whole bunch of graphics, that will work a whole lot better for you. Now, if you see something really cool, make sure you tag us on social media. If you're using Twitter, we love Twitter. Use the hashtag AKwx, that's short for Alaska Weather, and we'll see that really quickly. We've seen a lot of reports out of the Juneau area talking about the current weather there, going back and forth between rain and snow, and some of the pictures from your windows just at the kitchen window itself accumulating some of that rain and snow. So continue to share that. We certainly love that. nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov is the place to find us for email there if you've got questions about our website, questions about the show, or just a general weather question that you'd love to have answered. We can help with that. We'd be glad to do it. Here's a look at the hazardous weather situation across southeast tonight. We're going to start up north around the Haines and northern sections of the Juneau borough. We're expecting about 4 to 6 inches of snow in this region. That'll go until about 9 o'clock tonight for this winter storm warning. As snowfall rates should start to diminish as we go through the remainder of the evening hours there. Probably looking at a rain-snow mix close to sea level, but just a little bit higher up. Much greater chance for some accumulating snow there, especially west of the airport. So watch for snow to gradually diminish, but it could be kind of a heavy wet snow, about 4 to 6 inches there possible by the time it's all said and done, and we expect that'll be improving by 9 o'clock tonight. Now, around Hyder, for the last couple of days we've been talking about a significant snowfall there, and we're coming up on the tail end of that window, but still looking for stormfall snow totals of about 2 feet. With another 12 inches possible through tonight. So a total of 2, but another foot coming tonight. So a winter storm warning continues for your area until 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Travel may be difficult, and so may snow removal. So be extra careful if you're in that area. And along the Klondike Highway near White Pass, a winter storm warning will continue there until noon on Monday. New snow, probably up to about 10 inches or so. Probably a total accumulation there of about 10 inches with another 4 to 8 as we get into Monday. So snowfall rates probably heaviest through tonight and then more showery in nature as you come into Monday. So the Klondike Highway under a winter storm warning as well. And again, prepare to make it through White Pass, and whatever you need to do to have a shovel, chains, things like that. If you have to go, make sure you've got what you need to get all the way through there, and let people know you're coming and going so that you can do that safely. And do be careful. Here is a look at satellite picture. We've got a front draped across the northern Gulf and across the southern Bering Sea, wrapping into low pressure here. Now, as this low pressure system was crossing over one of the buoys, it stopped reporting. A lot of the time when that happens out there across the Aleutians and in the vicinity of the islands anyway, it means it's flipped, it means the weather sensors are damaged, and we're probably not going to hear much from that buoy any longer. As we continue to see this low pressure system filling in, I'll put this into loop here. I'm going to have to step off and take a drink here because I am battling the most vicious cold ever. Excuse me. We'll continue to see that low filling in, and this cold front will start lifting northward. As it does so, we'll likely see that that low is pushing more drier air towards southeastern Alaska. The result of that is that more rain will be falling across some of the lower terrain, and the snow will continue to gradually wind down as we move through a good chunk of southeast. Up across the north and the interior, a lot of clear, dry air there across the west coast. Temperatures have been a little bit milder as that southerly flow has been taking over. That is coming to an end now, and northerlies will be the rule as we go through tonight and into tomorrow. That is going to push some more ice southward across the Kotzebue Sound region. Because of that, we're watching for the potential of a polynya to close off across the Cape Espenberg to Wales region. Snow showers will continue across the Brooks Range, out across the west and into the Chukchi Sea. You'll notice that low pressure is across the southern Bering Sea now at 960 millibars, and the low across the western Gulf at 978 millibars will continue trekking eastward. That's got a little more cold air behind it, lifting northward slowly. The overall flow across southeastern Alaska will be generally onshore at this point, still continuing low clouds and showers and probably poor visibility for many. Now, as the low pressure system there across the southern Bering at 970 millibars continues to fill in here, we're going to have most of the activity across the central Bering. A little breezy, but not quite as windy as it has been in recent days. Across the central and western chain, you're looking at rain and snow showers there. Most of the Alaska Peninsula will be dealing with rain showers, and across some parts of the Kodiak Island region and southward. Just off the shore of the Kenai Peninsula, that cold air is working its way eastward, and we're going to get another little bit of a surge there of wind and rain across a large chunk of southeast as we get into Monday. That's where that added snow is coming into the Klondike Highway region. Snow showers generally at higher elevations, and lower terrain probably looking at rain showers there. Periods of light to moderate snow across southwestern Alaska. No warnings or watches out for that region just yet. And we'll probably see some snow showers passing through south central Alaska as well. A lot of that has been flirting with warmer air, and as you noticed yesterday, that creates a tricky travel problem with freezing rain mixing in with that snow and sometimes just plain old rain. Here's a look at Tuesday. And across southwestern Alaska, pockets of showers there, and across the central and eastern chain, as well as the central and western parts of the island, looking at rain and snow showers there. Probably dealing with some rain across most of the Gulf Coast, and low pressure getting ever closer to places like Yakutat, enhancing snowfall opportunities there. Across the Chukchi Sea, probably dealing with a little bit more of an onshore flow as we get into Tuesday. Excuse me. Now, pockets of fog expected across the Chukchi coast as well as the Beaufort Sea coast, with some areas of snow showers across St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island, and many sections of the interior will see a lot more cloud cover, probably helping to keep nighttime temperatures up. But all in all, moisture probably not enough, combined with not enough lift for widespread snow showers just yet before we get into Tuesday. Once this system gets in from the Chukchi coast, those conditions may change a little bit as we go. Here's a look at temperatures this afternoon. We saw 30s and 40s for most of southeast. Hyder was a much colder 28, kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Sitka with 1 inch of snow on the ground, 44, 40 around the capital city, and 34 around Haines, 33 in Yakutat there, 30 around Valdez, 20s for Anchorage down to Kenai, 37 in Homer and Seward, and 37 out in Middleton Island. Northway saw 3 below, one of the colder spots this morning with temperatures down to around 20 below, I believe. Eagle had 7 above. Fairbanks was looking at 11 below around 2 o'clock this afternoon. Let's see, Fort Yukon was about 7 degrees, 2 below around Kaktovik, 5 above around Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, and it was 1 above around Barrow. And then once you got into that southerly flow and what was left of it across the west coast, temperatures there were in the lower to mid 20s, anywhere around 12 for Shishmaref, 28 around Wales and Tin City, and 30 around Savunga. McGrath was a pleasant 2. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it certainly wasn't sub-zero, so 2 above was probably okay. 18 as you got out toward Grayling, and 22 in Bethel. Lake Iliamna was above freezing. Bristol Bay temperatures were back in the lower to mid-30s, and the Alaska Peninsula in the 30s and 40s there. 38 in St. Paul, 36 for St. George, and temps in the mid to upper 30s, still around Adak and Atka, with considerably less wind this afternoon. Here's a look at tonight. Overnight lows will stay in the 30s and 40s for a good chunk of southeast, south central in the teens and 20s. Kodiak 34, 5 to 10 below around the central interior and the middle Tanana Valley. About 4 to 5 below around Eagle as well. 8 below around Fort Yukon, and it was about 5 to 10 below for the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Points west a little bit milder. As you get out toward Point Hope and Point Lay, we see temperatures above 0. And temps are in the single digits to low teens for the Kotzebue Sound region, 12 in Nome overnight. Many in Southwest will see temps in the lower to mid-teens, 20s for the Bristol Bay region, and 20s and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the central and western chain. Highs there tomorrow in the 30s and 40s. And around Bristol Bay, upper 20s there. About 15 in Bethel. Norton Sound temps around the mid to upper teens, 21 in Nome. Single digit temps for the North Slope, 1 around Fort Yukon. Temps in the mid to upper teens there as you get into the middle Tanana Valley and southward, considerably warmer down the Parks Highway, 20s and 30s there, 35 in Kodiak, and 30s and 40s for parts of southeastern Alaska. On to flying weather. IFR conditions are expected across some of the higher terrain for southeast tomorrow, and as a result of that, that's probably going to really slow things down if you're trying to get through some of the passes. Now, we're already talking about a winter storm warning there and some heavy snow through White Pass, so plan on IFR conditions and probably not improving too much during the daytime. You'll see IFR along some of the boundary ranges and into the Chugach Range, as well as the Aleutian Range, and also around Kotzebue Sound, the northern side of Seward Peninsula, and on the North Slope, north of some of your favorite passes there. That expands in the afternoon and comes inland a little bit more into the Koyukuk Valley and also into parts of the western Alaska Range, as well as some of the northern and eastern ranges across southeast. MVFR for most of the Bering Sea. Excuse me. Here are your pass conditions. Anaktivik Pass, IFR, expected by the afternoon. Adigan Pass, we expect to see similar conditions, especially as you're coming out of those passes and moving northward. MVFR conditions to start the day. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see worsening ceilings, lowered visibility by the afternoon. IFR conditions there. Rainy Pass, MVFR. Windy Pass, we expect to see MVFR conditions there. Isabel Pass, marginal conditions throughout the day. Mentasta Pass, right now looks to be okay out in the east. VFR conditions there. Tanita Pass, probably MVFR through most of your Monday. As you get down south, you're going to get back into that coastal kind of muck that's moving up over the coast. MVFR to IFR conditions expected, and Chilkoot and White Pass, as we just saw, with snow falling in the region, low ceilings and low visibility. IFR through pretty much all day. Here's a look at freezing levels now, and surface freezing line hovering right around that Haines and Skagway region around Juneau, and then down the inner channels there across Prince William Sound, south of Cowgan Island and right over Bristol Bay, and then north between St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Island. Levels aloft still pretty kind of spread out now. The colder air has really moved in and kind of mixed up a lot of the atmosphere across the upper levels. So we've got about 2,000 to 4,000 feet across a good chunk of the Gulf. Icing potential above 1,000 feet. Some of that is a lot lower than it has been the last couple of days across a large part of the North Slope and north of the Bering Strait. And then out west, the central and western chain above 3,000 feet, light to isolated moderate there from Cape Newenham and all the way in toward the Parks Highway and east into the Copper River Basin, and then surrounding that weak wave of low pressure and inland as well, but much higher, above 4,000 to about 5,000 feet. Here's a look at the jet stream. This is kind of an odd pattern. There's a kind of a split flow here. We've got low pressure that's driving all of our unstable weather excuse me, across most of the Gulf and most of the North Pacific. Those wind speeds 115 to 140 knots. But then you've got high pressure out across the northern Bering, and that has kind of set up this in-between zone. So we've got the main superhighway of weather here. We've got this little off-ramp, if you will, kind of sitting here and just doing its own thing, and it's interrupting the flow. So we've kind of split off these two weather makers. This is the one that's allowing the big cold to move southward into the lower 48. This is the one that's providing all of the Pacific power to all the storms that are reaching the northwest coast and at times the Aleutians and the Gulf of Alaska. At 9,000 feet, southwesterlies are still in charge of most of Alaska. You can see that's where the warmth is coming from. Wind speeds there from about 10 to 40 knots or so over Kodiak Island across the central and western chain, northerlies across the western Bering. And once those swing eastward, many more places in Alaska, of course, will be much colder. South and westerlies are working into southeast Alaska, 50 to 70 knots at their strongest. Southwesterlies across the Shelikof Strait region all the way up toward Fort Yukon, those running from 10 to as strong as 40 knots. At 3,000 feet, looks like southwesterlies are in charge here as well. Bristol Bay looking at winds at 3,000, around 50 knots or so. And you can see that spreads into low pressure here across the northern Gulf, anywhere from 20 to 40 knots, 50 knots just south of Sand Point. North and easterlies are working across the northern Bering and through the Bering Strait across the Chukchi coast, 25 to 40 knots there. And very light winds across the interior, only 10 knots or so. Low pressure is also anchored up across the north slope. Winds around that, around 20 to 30 knots. And more of a south and westerly flow working across southeast, 30 to 50 knots. Generally, many places across the mainland are experiencing that warmer southerly flow, and that looks like that'll continue. So here's a look at turbulence. And you can see the focus is really right along that front that we were seeing on the surface charts not too long ago. Anywhere from about 4,000 feet with occasional, maybe even widespread moderate across parts of southeast tomorrow. Around Kodiak Island, watch for some significant chop. And along the Alaska Peninsula and the central and western chain, conditions will be improving, though, from west to east as winds continue to diminish throughout the day. Not only will the low-level wind shear threat go away slowly and surely from west to east, but the wind speeds itself and the turbulence associated with that should also improve. Around the Bering Strait, expect some chop around the strait southward toward St. Lawrence Island. That, too, should be around 4,000 feet and lower. That is a look at a aviation forecast that I hacked my way through there, so apologies for that. I'll get a cup of tea, and in the meantime, enjoy learning about METARs a little bit more, and I'll have your marine forecast and an update on the sea ice desk, hopefully in a clean fashion for you in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
You know, it'd be a lot of fun to get in this airplane and go flying with this person, but you and I have work to do. So let's talk about how TAFs are formatted. Now, the first line of each TAF starts at the left margin with the report header and the station identifier. Now, all other lines of a TAF will be indented at least 5 spaces, and any additional lines of a group will be indented 6 spaces. Now, the first forecast group, the one right after the when, which in this case is 19th day of the month at 11:30 Zulu, and right after the valid time period, which in this case 19th day of the month at 1200 Zulu to the 20th day of the month at 1200 Zulu, that first weather group belongs for the beginning time, which is the 19th day of the month at 1200 Zulu. So that's the beginning of the forecast period, and that's the beginning forecast weather. And what we're forecasting in this particular case is a variable wind of 16 knots gusting to 28 knots. And we have better than 6 statute miles visibility and scattered clouds at 500 feet. And we'll check over on the left-hand side. We have broken clouds at 2,500 feet, and those are cumulonimbus clouds. So that's the first forecast weather. Now, a significant change in the weather is indicated by a new forecast group. We'll call that a from group. In this case, it says from 1845 Zulu. Now, this from group will always start on a new line, and it'll be indented 5 spaces from the left margin. Now, from groups have to contain all of the elements of a forecast if those elements exist, because this is basically a new weather forecast. Other groups might contain only the changes. Now, the from group, as you see right here, is indicated a change in the forecast conditions, but it's one that's expected to take place pretty quickly. At any rate, the change is expected to take place in less than 1 hour. So we have here the from group, and what we're saying from 1845 Zulu, the wind is now expected to be from 160 degrees at 10 knots. We still have better than 6 miles, statute miles visibility, but the sky is clear. So that is the from group, and that's for a relatively quick change in the weather. But if you have a more gradual change in the weather, that's indicated that it might occur over a time period, then you'll use becoming instead. Here we have becoming from the time period at 2200 Zulu going to 2400 Zulu. We're having a becoming, which is a gradual change in the weather. So that's going to take place in this time group, and it's normally a 2-hour time period. It could be less than that, but it's a gradual change in the weather. Now the change is the wind is from 200 degrees at 13 knots, gusting to 20 knots. Let's see if we have anything else on the left-hand side for that, and we don't. So all we had now was a change in the wind. All other forecast items are expected to remain as they were previously forecast, and only the wind changed, and that wind will be the prevailing wind from then on in until it gets changed again. So the wind from then on in will be as changed in that becoming group. Now we have another group up here called a tempo group. And this indicates changes that are going to be temporary in nature. So temporary in nature from 400 to 500 Zulu, here are the conditions. And these are changes that are expected to affect the weather for less than 1 hour each time they happen. And in total, to last less than half of this time period indicated right here. Now, they're going to tell us what is going to change during that temporary group. And temporarily here, we'll have from 400 to 500 Zulu, broken clouds at 5,000 feet. So now, that is the only thing that is expected to change. All other elements are expected to remain as forecast during previous time periods. Now we have something coming up here, probability 40. And what they're saying is the probability is 40% that this will occur. They could also say probability 30%. So, and that probability, by the way, is that group is used to forecast the probability of, we'll say, thunderstorms or other precipitation, and also the associated weather conditions that might go along with that. So here we have probability 40 that during the time period from 600 Zulu to 800 Zulu that will have 2 statute miles visibility, and a thunderstorm with moderate rain. So that's worth talking about. There's a probability of 40% that's going to happen, and also an overcast with 800-foot clouds, and those clouds will be cumulonimbus clouds. And then we have another becoming, and the thing I want to point out in this becoming, from 900 to 1100 Zulu, we have here no significant weather, NSW, and I wanted to tell you what that means. No significant weather will be included in a becoming or tempo group to indicate that no significant weather is expected, and the previously mentioned weather has ended. So now you have a good idea how TAFs are formatted.
And here's a look at your sea ice edge. Remember, we were talking about those southerly winds the last couple days, and it has really chewed up the ice across a large part of regions north of the Bering Strait, not to mention along the southwestern coast. The concern is now, as we get into Monday, that we have potential of some higher concentration ice just north of Cape Espenberg to Wales, and that some of that may come back toward the coast a little bit more. So some of that has changed. The amount of visual information that we have from looking down from some better satellite imagery tells us that some of that high concentration ice is already a little bit closer to the coast to begin with. So conditions have changed a little bit there, but keep in mind that those northerly winds will be strong, at least for a little while, as we get into Monday morning. So some of that could be on the move. Just be careful if you're around the Shishmaref, Cape Espenberg out toward Wales region. And all that is true really for any part of Norton Sound and the northern YK Delta coast. As we get into more of that northerly flow, any ice along the coast will be in transit and on the move. Here's a look at southeast, and we've got broad south and easterly flow on the inside. Looking at 30 to 35 knot winds with 6 to 7 foot seas. The thunderstorm symbol indicates there's a chance for thunderstorms as that next wave of weather moves in, at least an isolated case all the way from Yakutat southward toward the outer coast of Craig. 30 to as high as 45 knot winds expected from south to north. 27-foot seas in the north and 24-foot seas in the south. So Monday, a little bit of a blustery day. Conditions do improve a little bit on Tuesday. You'll see that south and westerly flow continuing along the outer coast. 21 to as high as 27-foot seas along the outer coast with 25-foot winds across the inside. 5 to as high as 10-foot seas closer to the ocean entrances of the Dixon entrance on Tuesday. For south central northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound, a 2-foot sea expected there. Southeasterlies, the northern end of Cook Inlet and sea ice-free waters. Northeasterlies south of Calgon Island and into the Barrens, but then we get back into that stronger southwesterly flow that's still in charge of Kodiak Island and either side. 25 knot winds east of the Barrens, 17-foot sea there, 19-foot seas east of Kodiak, and 20-foot seas there as you get outside of Resurrection Bay with a 30 knot wind, 20-foot seas. The conditions will improve there Tuesday as well, more of a northerly flow, but we still have a decent southerly flow moving up toward Montague Island and outside of Prince William Sound. Northeasterlies inside, 15 knots there. Northeasterlies coming down Cook Inlet all the way past the Barrens. And southwesterlies inside of Shelikof Strait with a 15-knot wind and 4-foot seas, 15-foot seas on the other side of Kodiak Island, still hanging on to that 25-knot wind. For Bristol Bay, look for a southeast flow, 7-foot seas there. Southwesterlies from the Bering Sea coast and into the Pacific coast, 25 to 40 knot winds with 23 to 29-foot seas on Monday. For Tuesday, the northwesterly flow takes over in most areas except for Castle Cape to Chignik, 30 knots there with an 18-foot sea, 21-foot seas down the coast, but again more of a northwesterly influence. For the Aleutians, conditions are still improving. They will continue to improve tonight, but big improvements tomorrow as winds come down to about 45 to 50 knots for many areas. Seas down to about 25 feet, 34 feet across the Pacific coast there around Nikolsky to Atka. Higher gusts will still be a problem, as well as higher seas. And 15 to 20 knots across the western chain, 30 to 40 knots, I should say 15 to 20-foot seas are expected there on Monday afternoon. For Tuesday, northwesterlies continue there with more of a north and northwesterly turn for the rest of the central and eastern chain. 25 to 30 knots, 18 to 21-foot seas on the Pacific coast, and 11 to 12-foot seas for the central and eastern coast of the Bering. On the west coast, northerlies across St. Lawrence Island, northeasterlies shift north of Macoriac and Nunivak Island, easterlies out of the Kuskokwim Delta, and northeasterlies for St. Paul and St. George, 25 knots with an 11-foot sea, 12-foot seas around St. Matthew, and 30 knots there from the north and east around St. Matthew Island waters. For Tuesday, expect all areas to be in a due north flow, anywhere from 25 to 30 knots, 7 to 9-foot seas in the north, and 8 to 9-foot seas across the south, including St. Paul, St. George, and the Kuskokwim Delta there for your Tuesday. For the north slope, over the ice, it's easterlies, 10 to 15 knots, and we get into that northerly flow here around the Chukchi Seacoast. See that? Northerlies, 25 knots there into the outside waters of the Kotzebue Sound region, as well as around the coastline of Shishmaref and Tin City. As we get into Tuesday, not a whole lot of change there. We'll keep the northerlies from Cape Lisburne to Point Hope, but we get more of a northwesterly flow developing around Barrow to Wainwright. Southwesterlies develop around Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, and we get a light west wind around Kaktovik, 10 knots there. That's for Tuesday. Recapping tonight's weather, winter storm warnings still the rule for a large part of southeast around Hyder, up to 2 feet of snow by the time it's all said and done. You could get another 12 inches alone just tonight. It'll be wrapping up tomorrow. Around the Haynesboro and up toward White Pass, winter storm warning continues there. About 3 to 6 inches of snow is possible, but it will be heavy and wet. Watch for some of that to change over to rain closer to sea level, but could make driving through the pass fairly tricky, so do be careful. High wind warnings have been dropped across the central Aleutians as low pressure continues to fill in across the central chain, but it will be blustery and windy as we go into the rest of the work week. Low pressure across the northern Gulf will keep rain and snow in the forecast for south central. Most of the interior are going to be relatively quiet. There will be building chances for snow showers, though, as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, as a little bit of a northwesterly push starts to work in from the Chukchi Sea. Remember, you can always find more information anytime on your NOAA Weather Radio, and of course, weather.gov/.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Our family and senior membership levels are perfect ways to encourage new and returning members to join our cause and support Alaska Public Media. And you'll get 12 months of Passport, our online video player filled with exclusive PBS content, as our way of saying thanks. It's quick, easy, and secure to become a member by going online or giving us a call. Please join our growing list of viewers who choose to support Alaska Public Media. Thanks.